20 years had passed since the war ended. In the great lecture hall of the Galactic Academy on Veltaris, 300 students from 40 different species sat waiting. Today was special. Today, Professor Thalvex would give his final lecture before retirement. At 98 years old, he had become the galaxy's leading expert on humanity. Thalvex walked slowly to the podium. His blue skin had faded to almost white now. His movements were careful, measured. But his mind remained sharp and his voice still carried power when he spoke. "Good morning," he said. 20 years ago, I published a book called The Warning We Ignored. Many of you have read it as part of your studies. Today, I want to talk about why I wrote it and what lessons we still need to learn. Near the front of the hall, a young Veltari student named Jiwan raised her hand. "Professor, I read your book 3 times, but I still do not understand. Why do we fear the humans? They have been peaceful for 20 years. They trade fairly, they follow galactic laws, they even help the Krovar rebuild their economy." Thalvex smiled. He had expected this question. The young ones always asked it. "Let me answer with a story. Please, everyone, look at your data pads." The students activated their devices. A holographic image appeared above each desk, showing a peaceful human colony world. Children played in parks. Farmers worked in fields. Cities sparkled with lights at night. This is New Haven, a human colony established 30 years ago. It looks peaceful, yes? Now watch. The image changed. Military bases appeared in the mountains. Shipyards materialized in orbit. Weapons factories rose from the ground. The entire transformation took less than 6 months. This is what New Haven became when humanity mobilized for war. Every human colony has this capability. Every peaceful farming world can transform into a military stronghold in weeks. They keep this ability hidden during peacetime, but it never goes away. A Krovar student in the back row spoke up, his voice bitter. "So we should fear them forever? Never trust them? Always remember what they did to my people?" Before Thalvex could answer, another voice filled the room. "That is an excellent question." Everyone turned. Professor Kyung-soo had entered quietly through a side door. He was a human historian who had been teaching at the academy for 15 years. His partnership with Thalvex had produced some of the most important research on human-alien relations. "May I answer that?" Kyung-soo asked. Thalvex nodded and stepped aside. The human professor walked to the center of the stage. He was middle-aged with gray streaking his dark hair. He wore simple academic robes, but something in his posture suggested military training. "You should not fear humanity," Kyung-soo said clearly. "You should respect us. There is a difference. Fear makes you do foolish things. Respect makes you wise. The Krovar feared us after the war. They thought we would destroy them. Instead, we helped them rebuild. Why?" He paused and looked at the students. No one answered. "Because we never wanted to fight in the first place. We wanted to grow our crops and raise our families. The Krovar attacked us, so we had to prove that attacking humanity carries a price too high to pay. Once we proved that, once everyone understood, we could go back to being farmers and merchants and teachers." The door at the back of the hall opened again. Ambassador Hyo-jin entered, now elderly but still carrying herself with dignity. She had retired from diplomatic service 10 years ago but occasionally gave guest lectures. "Professor Thalvex," she said warmly, "I hope I am not too late." "Right on time, as always, Ambassador." Hyo-jin walked to the front and stood beside the 2 professors. "I was asked to share my perspective on the war. I will tell you something that few people know. When Admiral Yoon-soo proposed his strategy to dismantle the Krovar military, there were heated debates in our government. Some wanted mercy from the start. Others wanted complete destruction. The vote was very close." She looked directly at the Krovar student who had spoken earlier. "I voted for mercy, not because I forgave what your leaders did to Sanctuary. I will never forgive that. But because I understood that making the Krovar extinct would make humanity into something we did not want to be. So we chose a middle path. We destroyed your military power completely, but we preserved your people and culture. Was it the right choice?" The Krovar student shifted uncomfortably. "My grandparents tell stories of the occupation. The restrictions, the shame. I imagine they do. And what do they tell you about now? They say things are better. The new government is less corrupt. Trade is fair. We have peace," Hyojin nodded. "Peace is the goal. Everything else is just the cost of achieving it." The door opened one more time. A woman in military uniform entered, medals gleaming on her chest. General Young-mi had risen through the ranks over 20 years. She now commanded all human forces in this sector of the galaxy. "Sorry I am late," she said. Military exercises ran long. Thalvex gestured for her to join them. "General Young Mi has agreed to share her experience as someone who fought in the war." Young Mi stood before the students, and suddenly the room felt different. This was not an academic. This was a warrior. The students sensed it instinctively. "I killed 47 Krovar during the war," she said bluntly. "I kept count. Each one was somebody's child, somebody's parent, somebody's friend. I did it because they killed my brother and millions of others. But after the war ended, I had to stand guard over Krovar civilians. I had to process their travel documents. I had to look into their eyes and see that they were just people like me." She paused, and her voice softened. "That was harder than fighting. Hating an enemy is easy. Seeing them as people while still remembering what they did, that is difficult. But that is what we chose to do. We defeated the Krovar military, but we tried not to destroy the Krovar people. I do not know if we succeeded completely. But we tried." Jiwon raised her hand again. "General, do you think humanity would go to war again? If another species threatened you?" Young Mi looked at her for a long moment. "Yes, without hesitation. If you threaten our people, we will respond with everything we have. But understand this, we do not want to fight. We genuinely prefer peace. We would rather trade with you, learn from you, share the galaxy with you. But if you force us to choose between our people's safety and your survival, we will choose our people every single time." Thalvex stepped forward again. "That is the lesson I have spent 20 years trying to teach. Humanity is not aggressive. They are protective. They are not conquerors. They are defenders. But they are also ruthless when defending what they love. The Krovar learned this too late. You have the privilege of learning it without suffering." He activated another hologram, this one showing the quarantined zone around what used to be Krovar military space. Several planets floated in the image, their surfaces still showing scars from the war. "We preserved these worlds as they were left after the fighting. No cleanup, no rebuilding. They remain as monuments to what happens when you challenge humanity. Every species considering conflict should see these worlds first. Let me show you." The hologram zoomed in on one planet. Cities stood empty, not destroyed but abandoned. Shipyards hung in orbit like skeletal remains. It was eerie, haunting, a civilization frozen at the moment of its defeat. "The Krovar Dominion controlled a quarter of the galaxy," Thalvex continued. "They were powerful, ancient, proud. In 6 months, humanity reduced them to this. Not through genocide, not through cruelty, through systematic, methodical, unstoppable military force. This is what I tried to warn the Council about before the war. This is what I have tried to teach you all now." Jiwon spoke up one more time. "Professor, what if we do not want to learn this lesson? What if we want to believe the galaxy can be peaceful without threats?" Thalvex smiled gently at her. "That is a beautiful dream, Jiwon. I hope you live to see it. But until that day comes, you must understand reality. Peace exists because strong species choose not to fight. Humanity is one of those strong species. They could dominate the galaxy if they wished. Instead, they chose to be partners. But they will never be victims again." That is the warning. The lecture ended. Students filed out slowly, talking among themselves. Some looked thoughtful. Some looked worried. All looked like they understood something they had not grasped before. After everyone left, the 5 figures remained on stage. Thalvex, Kyungsoo, Hyojin, Young Mi, and one other who had been sitting quietly in the shadows. Admiral Yoon-soo, now ancient and retired, walked slowly into the light. "Did we do the right thing?" Young Mi asked quietly. "Sometimes I still wonder." Yoon-soo looked at her with tired eyes. "We did what we had to do. That is all any of us can say. The Krovar forced our hand. We responded. Now the galaxy understands." "Is that right?" "I do not know. But it was necessary." Thalvex put his hand on the old admiral's shoulder. "Your restraint after the victory matters as much as the victory itself. You proved humanity could win and then choose mercy. That is what makes the difference between conquerors and protectors." Hyojin looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, new species are developing spaceflight. They will join the galactic community in time. What will they think of us? The species that nearly destroyed the Krovar. The Krovar military headquarters on their homeworld received the first reports at dawn. 6 of their frontier bases had gone silent during the night. Not destroyed. Just silent. No distress calls. No warnings. They simply stopped transmitting. War Chief Kalthon, freshly promoted after his victory at Sanctuary, stood in the command center and tried to understand what was happening. "Send scout ships to investigate," he ordered. Find out what happened to those bases. The scout ships never came back. By noon, 12 more bases had gone dark. By sunset, the Crovar had lost contact with 37 military installations across 4 star systems. It was only when a damaged courier ship limped into Crovar space that they learned what was happening. The humans had arrived, but they had not arrived in the way anyone expected. There were no massive fleet movements, no grand declarations. The humans had simply appeared, struck with overwhelming force, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. They were using tactics the galaxy had not seen in centuries. Guerrilla warfare in space. Admiral Yun-Su commanded the human fleet from the battleship Righteous Fury. He sat in his command chair and studied the tactical maps with satisfaction. Around him, dozens of officers coordinated strikes across 6 star systems simultaneously. The Crovar had 3,000 ships. The humans had 15,000. But Yun-Su was not interested in fair fights. "Status on Battle Group 7? He asked. "They finished at the shipyard. 17 Crovar vessels destroyed. 0 human casualties. They're moving to the next target. Battle Group 12? They encountered a Crovar patrol fleet. Eliminated them in 4 minutes. Crovar casualties total. Human casualties, 2 frigates damaged, being repaired." Yun-Su nodded. This was how humans fought when they stopped pretending to be civilized. They studied the enemy. They learned their patterns. Then they destroyed them with methodical efficiency. Colonel Jiwoo led one of those strike teams. She commanded the 1st Marine Division, 5,000 soldiers who specialized in ship-to-ship combat. Her people did not fight battles in space. They boarded enemy vessels and killed everyone inside. The Crovar had never seen boarding actions before. Modern warfare in the galaxy happened at long range. With missiles and energy weapons, ships did not get close enough to board. It was considered barbaric, primitive, and inefficient. The humans did not care what it was considered. Jiwoo's transport ship matched velocity with a Crovar supply vessel. Her Marines cut through the hull with plasma torches and poured inside wearing powered armor that made them look like metal demons. The Crovar crew tried to fight back, but they had no experience with close-quarters combat. Their weapons were designed for shooting at targets hundreds of meters away, not enemies who were right in front of them. The battle lasted 12 minutes. When it ended, Jiwoo stood on the bridge of the Crovar ship and looked at the surviving crew members. 3 Crovar out of 200. She had them sent to a prisoner transport, then ordered her people to strip the ship of anything useful. Weapons, supplies, intelligence data. The humans took it all. "Set charges," she ordered. 5-minute timer. Her Marines planted explosives throughout the ship and evacuated. 5 minutes later, the Crovar vessel disappeared in a flash of light. It was the 17th ship Jiwoo had captured and destroyed that week. Back on Veltaris, Thalvek sat in emergency council sessions that happened every day now. The Crovar representatives begged for support. They showed footage of human attacks. They presented casualty reports. They demanded that the council enforce the laws of war. "The humans are violating every treaty," the Crovar ambassador pleaded. "They take no prisoners. They show no mercy. They attack civilian targets." Thalvek stood slowly. His old bones ached, but his voice remained strong. "Show me evidence of attacks on civilian targets. Show me proof that humans have killed non-combatants." The Crovar ambassador fumbled through his data. He could not find any. Every human target had been military. Ships, bases, weapons factories. The humans were systematically dismantling the Crovar war machine, but they were not killing civilians. Yet, "They are coming for our homeworld," the ambassador said desperately. "You must help us. If the Crovar fall today, who will fall tomorrow?" The council members looked at each other uncomfortably. No one wanted to admit it, but they were all thinking the same thing. What if the humans come for us next? The vote failed. Only 5 species agreed to send military support to the Crovar. It was not enough. In human space, Prime Minister Sang-hee addressed Parliament. She was a small woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. She had been elected on a platform of peace and cooperation with alien species. Now she was leading her people through the largest war in human history. "We did not choose this path," she said. "We extended friendship. We offered compromise. We begged them to find a peaceful solution. They answered with fire and death. 3 million of our people died because the Crovar wanted to prove their strength. So now we will teach them what strength truly means. The parliament erupted in applause. Every member stood. Outside, across every human world, millions watched the broadcast. They had all lost someone at Sanctuary. Friends, family, colleagues. The anger that burned in humanity's heart was not hot rage. It was cold, calculated fury. War Chief Inho stood before a holographic display showing the entire Krovar Dominion. He was humanity's chief military strategist, a man who had studied warfare for 40 years. His fingers moved across the display, marking targets. "We will not occupy their worlds," he explained to his staff. "Occupation is expensive and takes time. Instead, we will remove their ability to wage war. Shipyards first, then weapons factories, then fuel refineries and supply depots. We will dismantle their civilization piece by piece until they cannot fight anymore." A young officer raised his hand hesitantly. "Sir, won't that kill their economy? Their entire society depends on those facilities." Inho looked at him with dead eyes. "Yes, it will. That is the point. The Krovar must learn that challenging humanity has a cost they cannot afford to pay." The campaign continued for 6 months. The humans moved through Krovar space like a force of nature. They were everywhere and nowhere. They struck with precision, then vanished. The Krovar fleet tried to defend everything and ended up defending nothing. Thalvex watched from afar and documented everything. His journal grew thick with observations about human warfare. He noted how they used deception and misdirection. He recorded their willingness to sacrifice ships to achieve objectives. He saw how they adapted to every Krovar tactic within days of encountering it. But what disturbed him most was the cold efficiency. The humans showed no anger, no hate. They fought the way a farmer cuts wheat. It was simply work that needed to be done. After 6 months, the Krovar Dominion had lost 800 warships and 300 military bases. They had not successfully defended a single target. Their economy was collapsing. Their people were terrified. And the human fleet had finally reached their homeworld. Admiral Yunsu stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the planet below. 5 billion Krovar lived there. It was one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. Cities covered 3 continents. Orbital stations ringed the planet like jewels. His communication officer approached nervously. "Sir, we're receiving surrender offers from the surface. The Krovar government wants to negotiate." Yunsu considered this for a long moment. Then he shook his head. "Tell them we will accept only unconditional surrender. They will disarm completely. They will submit to human oversight. They will pay reparations, and they will never again build a warship." "And if they refuse?" Yunsu looked at the planet with eyes that held no mercy. "Then we show them what happened to Sanctuary. But we will make it last longer." The message was transmitted. On the surface, the Krovar government realized they had no choice. They surrendered within the hour. Thalvex received the news in his study. He sat in silence, staring at his notes. 6 months. It had taken the humans only 6 months to completely destroy a civilization that had dominated a quarter of the galaxy for 1,000 years. He picked up his pen and wrote the final entry of this chapter. "I tried to warn them. I told them about human capacity for violence, but words cannot convey what I have witnessed. The humans did not simply win a war. They demonstrated that crossing them means annihilation, and they did it without anger, without hate, without mercy. They did it because it needed to be done. That is what makes them truly terrifying." The countdown reached 0 at exactly midnight Galactic Standard Time. In 15 human colonies across 3 solar systems, families gathered around communication screens to watch the deadline pass. Children asked their parents what would happen next. The adults tried to smile and say that everything would be fine. Most of them were lying. On the colony world called Sanctuary, Dr. Taeyang stood on the observation deck of the main research station. Below him, the terraformed valley stretched green and alive under 2 small suns. His team had spent 12 years turning this dead rock into a place where earth plants could grow. Wheat fields swayed in the engineered breeze. Apple trees bore fruit. Rivers flowed where there had been only dust and stone. "Beautiful, isn't it?" said his assistant, a young woman named So Min who had been born here, making her one of the first generation of true colonists. "I can't believe they think they can make us leave." Taeyang said nothing. Through his telescope, he could see the stars. Somewhere up there, the Krovar fleet was coming. Long-range sensors had detected them entering the system 2 hours ago. 300 warships, more than enough to force compliance from the small defensive fleet that protected the colonies. That defensive fleet consisted of 12 frigates, 23 patrol craft, and 1 destroyer. They were commanded by Captain Bowra, a career officer who had sent her crew a message that morning. "We are outgunned. We are outnumbered, but we are not leaving." Bowra stood on the bridge of her frigate, the Indomitable, and watched the enemy fleet approach. Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Hansol, kept updating the count. 300 warships. No, 312. No, 315. The Crover kept bringing more ships into the system. "They want to impress us," Bowra said calmly. "They think we'll run when we see their numbers." "Captain," Hansol said carefully, "maybe we should consider, we're not abandoning 3 million civilians." Bowra cut him off. "Send the message to all ships. Formation Delta, we engage in 15 minutes. The bridge went silent. Formation Delta was an attack pattern, not a defensive one. Hansol started to protest, then saw his captain's face and closed his mouth.
He had served with Bowra for 8 years.
He knew that expression. The discussion was over. Across the system, the other ship captains received their orders. Some argued. Some questioned. All obeyed. They positioned their small fleet in a pattern that made no sense for defense. It made perfect sense for something else. High Admiral Yunsu received the situation report in his office on Earth. He was the supreme commander of humanity's military forces, a position he had held for 6 years. He read Bowra's last transmission 3 times. Then he picked up his communicator and connected to every military base in human space. "Authorization code Zeta 9, he said quietly. "Full mobilization. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon. I want the entire fleet ready to move in 48 hours. His aide, a colonel named Jiwoo, stared at him. "Sir, that's our entire military. Every single asset. That would leave Earth and all core worlds completely undefended." "They won't need defending," Yunsu replied, "because we're not going to be defending. Send a message to the Crovar fleet. Tell them they have one chance to withdraw peacefully. After that, we show them what happens when you threaten humans." Back in the frontier system, the Crovar fleet slowed as they approached the human defensive position. The fleet commander, War Chief Kalthan, studied the tactical display with confusion. The human ships had arranged themselves in a loose sphere, like they were trying to surround his much larger force. It was ridiculous. It was suicidal. "They're insane," his second-in-command observed. 12 frigates against 300 cruisers? "Send them the final warning," Kalthan ordered. "Tell them to stand down or be destroyed. Give them 5 minutes to comply." Captain Bowra received the message. She counted down the 5 minutes in her head while her crew worked silently at their stations. When the time expired, she opened a channel to all human ships and all Crovar ships. "This is Captain Bowra of the Terran Defense Force. You have entered sovereign human territory with hostile intent. You have threatened our civilians. You have ignored diplomatic solutions, so let me make this very simple. Leave now, or we will kill as many of you as possible before you kill us." Kalthan laughed at the transmission. Then he gave the order to fire. The battle lasted 17 minutes. The human ships moved faster than the Crovar expected. They used tactics the Crovar had never seen. 3 frigates flew directly at the Crovar formation, absorbing fire while the others targeted engines and weapon systems with precision strikes. When a human ship took critical damage, its captain would accelerate into the nearest enemy vessel at full speed. The Crovar had never seen kamikaze tactics before. The first time a human frigate crashed into one of their cruisers at near light speed. The explosion destroyed both ships and damaged 6 others. The second time it happened, Kalthan started shouting orders to spread his fleet out. The third time he realized these humans were not trying to win. They were trying to hurt the Crovar as badly as possible before dying. By the time the last human ship exploded, the Crovar fleet had lost 47 vessels. 47 ships destroyed by 12 frigates and 23 patrol craft. The Crovar had never lost that many ships in a single engagement in their entire history. Kalthan stared at the debris field where the human ships had been. His hands were shaking. His crew looked terrified. They had won the battle, but it felt like defeat. "Send a message to the colonies," he finally said. "Tell them to surrender immediately or we will bombard their cities." On Sanctuary, Dr. Taeyang watched the defense fleet die on his monitors. He felt tears on his face but did not wipe them away. Somin was crying too. Everyone in the station was crying. They had just watched friends and family sacrifice themselves to buy time that wouldn't matter. The Crovar ultimatum arrived 30 minutes later. The colonial governor refused to surrender. The Crovar began orbital bombardment 10 minutes after that. Taeyang stood at the window and watched the fire fall from the sky. The wheat fields burned first, then the forests, then the cities. The research station shook as explosions walked across the valley below. He put his arm around Somin and held her as the world ended around them. The bombardment lasted 4 hours. When it stopped, 3 million colonists had become 300,000 survivors. Sanctuary was dead. The other 14 colonies had surrendered rather than suffer the same fate. The news reached Earth 16 hours later. Admiral Yun-Su watched the footage of Sanctuary burning. He watched it 3 times. Then he stood and addressed the camera that would broadcast his message to the Crovar Dominion. I am High Admiral Yun-Su of the Terran Defense Force. You have murdered 3 million human civilians. You have destroyed worlds we built with our own hands. You wanted war. You will get extinction. We are coming for you. And when we are done, your species will exist only as a warning to others. Thalvex received a copy of the message in his home on Veltaris. He watched it alone in his study, and when it finished, he sat in silence for a long time. Then he began writing in his private journal. The entry would later become the first chapter of his book. Today the galaxy learned a terrible truth, he wrote. The humans were never the merchants and farmers we thought them to be. They were warriors pretending to be farmers, and we just destroyed their crops. The human fleet began moving the next day. Not 12 ships. Not 100 ships. 15,000 warships. Every military vessel humanity possessed. They moved toward Crovar space like a storm made of steel and fury. The war had begun. One alien's warning echoes. Don't challenge the humans, they'll leave nothing but ashes. Story outline. 5-part structure. Part 1. The Council's arrogant setting, the Galactic Assembly. Hall on the capital world of Veltaris, approximately 300 years after humanity's first contact with the galactic community. Key characters: Thalvex, a veteran diplomat from the Veltari Empire, one of the oldest species in the galaxy, Commander Daewon, human liaison officer to the Galactic Council Ambassador Hyojin, senior human diplomat, Vormath, Warhawk representative from the militant Crovar Dominion plot points. The Galactic Council convenes to discuss humanity's rapid expansion across formerly unclaimed sectors. The Crovar Dominion accuses humans of violating territorial agreements and demands they halt colonization efforts. Thalvex, having studied human history extensively, warns the Council against escalating tensions with humanity. His warnings are dismissed as cowardice. Other species mock humanity's relatively brief spacefaring history. The Council votes to issue an ultimatum. Humanity must abandon 15 frontier colonies or face military consequences. Ambassador Hyojin calmly accepts the ultimatum document, but her expression reveals nothing. Thalvex privately attempts to speak with Commander Daewon, urging diplomatic resolution. The part ends with the Crovar Dominion assembling the largest fleet ever seen in the galaxy. Part 2. The First Blood Setting, the Frontier Zone, human colonies in the disputed sectors, spanning 3 solar systems. Key characters: Captain Bora, commander of the Human Defense Frigate. Indomitable Dr. Taeyang, civilian scientist leading terraforming operations on colony. World Sanctuary High Admiral Yun-Su, human fleet commander. Thalvex, now desperately trying to prevent war through back-channel communications. Plot points. The evacuation deadline passes. Human colonists refuse to abandon their homes. Crovar warships enter human space. Expecting easy compliance, Captain Bora's small defensive fleet, vastly outnumbered, engages the enemy rather than retreat. The Crovar fleet is stunned by human tactical ferocity and willingness to use kamikaze tactics. While the human ships are destroyed, they inflict devastating casualties. Before falling, Dr. Taeyang and thousands of civilians are killed when the Crovar bombard Sanctuary. News of the massacre spreads across human space. Within hours, Thalvex receives intelligence reports showing humanity mobilizing its entire military infrastructure. He realizes, with horror, that the galaxy has made a catastrophic miscalculation. The part ends with Admiral Yun-Su broadcasting a single message to the Crovar. You wanted war. You'll get extinction. Part 3. The Human War Machine. Awakens setting. Multiple fronts across the galaxy as human fleets deploy with shocking speed. Key characters: Admiral Yun-Su, leading the primary assault fleet; Colonel Ji-Woo, commander of the elite human; Marine Corps Prime Minister Sang-hee, human political leader coordinating the war effort Thalvex; observing the conflict with growing dread; documenting everything, War Chief In-ho, strategic mastermind of human military operations plot; points human fleets emerge from hyperspace at multiple Krovar military installations simultaneously. The galaxy witnesses human warfare for the first time. No mercy, no prisoners, total warfare. Colonel Ji-Woo's Marines employ tactics considered barbaric by galactic standards: boarding actions, hand-to-hand combat, fighting in conditions that would kill other species. The Krovar call for council support, but other species hesitate to intervene. Human forces demonstrate technological innovations kept hidden during peacetime: railguns that punch through shields, nanite weapons that consume enemy ships. Thalvex compiles a secret dossier titled The Human Capacity for Destruction. As he watches world after world fall, Prime Minister Sang-hee addresses the galaxy. We asked for peace. You gave us war. We will finish what you started. War Chief In-ho reveals humanity's strategy, not occupation, but complete dismantling of Krovar civilization. The part ends with Krovar homeworld under siege, and the Council realizing humanity will not stop. Part 4. Ashes and aftermath setting. The Krovar Dominion's territory, now devastated. The Galactic Council chambers in emergency session. Key characters: Admiral Yun-Su, standing over the ruins of Krovar civilization; Ambassador Hyo-jin, returning to the Council with humanity's terms Thalvex, attempting to negotiate peace before total annihilation occurs; Engineer Su-bin, human specialist overseeing the dismantling operations Young-mi, a human soldier who questions the extent of the destruction plot points. The Krovar Dominion has effectively ceased to exist. Their worlds are occupied or destroyed. Engineer Su-bin's team systematically dismantle Krovar shipyards, weapon facilities, and industrial infrastructure. Young-mi witnesses the scale of destruction and struggles with guilt, but remains committed to the mission. Thalvex successfully arranges a meeting between council leaders and Ambassador Hyo-jin. The ambassador presents holographic evidence of the Sanctuary Massacre, the unprovoked attack, and humanity's repeated attempts at peace. She delivers humanity's terms. The Krovar species will be allowed to survive, but will never again possess spacefaring capability. Other council species, terrified of suffering the same fate, unanimously agree to all human demands. Thalvex pleads with Hyo-jin to show mercy, to demonstrate that humans can be more than destroyers. Admiral Yun-Su addresses the council via hologram, delivering a chilling speech about the cost of underestimating humanity. The part ends with humanity establishing a quarantine zone around former Krovar space. A permanent reminder. Part 5. The warning setting, 20 years after the war. The Galactic Academy of Historical Studies on Veltaris. Key characters: Thalvex, now elderly, a professor of human studies, Professor Kyung-soo, human historian collaborating with Thalvex Ji-won; young Veltari student Ambassador Hyo-jin, retired, giving a guest lecture. Young-mi, now a decorated general, haunted by memories. Plot points. Thalvex has spent 2 decades writing the definitive history of the human Krovar War. His book, The Warning We Ignored, is required reading across the galaxy. Ji-won, Thalvex's most promising student, questions why the galaxy fears humans, when humans have been peaceful for 20 years. Professor Kyung-soo explains the human philosophy: peace through strength, but peace nonetheless. Ambassador Hyo-jin delivers a guest lecture, revealing the internal debates within human government during the war. She admits that many humans, including herself, were horrified by what they had to do. General Young-mi makes a surprise appearance, sharing her experiences and the psychological cost of the war. Thalvex presents his thesis. Humans possess a unique combination of compassion and ruthlessness. They will extend the hand of friendship until you force them to make a fist. And when they do, gods help you. The class visits a memorial, a preserved Krovar settlement, left untouched as a reminder. Ji-won understands the lesson. Humanity earned peace not through aggression, but by proving the cost of aggression against them. The story closes with Thalvex's warning, being broadcast across the galaxy as a new species applies for council membership. The final scene, a council representative watches the broadcast and says, "Before we vote, show them the Krovar worlds." Themes and central messages: the duality of humanity, capable of great compassion and terrible destruction. The story doesn't glorify violence but explores the consequences of forcing peaceful people to war. The cost of war. Both victors and vanquished are scarred. Young Mi's character arc shows that winning doesn't mean being unaffected, respect through understanding. Thalvex represents the voice of reason who actually studied humans. His warnings were ignored because the council chose arrogance over wisdom, the burden of strength. Humanity's ultimate victory isn't just military. It's demonstrating restraint after proving capability. The quarantine of the Krovar could have been genocide, but wasn't historical memory. The preservation of Krovar settlements as warnings, not trophies. The collaborative human-alien historical record ensures the truth isn't lost. Stylistic notes narrative voice. Third-person limited, primarily following Thalvex as the through-line character. His perspective as an outsider provides commentary on human actions. Multiple POV characters allow different perspectives on the same event's tone. Begins with political tension and diplomatic maneuvering, escalates to brutal warfare with unflinching description, concludes with somber reflection and hard-won wisdom key, recurring motif. Thalvex's journal entries at the beginning of each part, showing his evolving understanding. Each entry becomes more desperate and then finally resigned and philosophical. Notes: this outline provides a complete HFY, humanity, fuck yeah, story that explores the darker side of human exceptionalism while maintaining moral complexity. The characters face real consequences, experience doubt, and ultimately the victory is bittersweet. The framing device of Thalvex as historian and warner gives the story both immediate drama and long-term perspective. The Krovar homeworld looks strange from orbit now. The cities still stood, but the shipyards were gone. The military bases had been reduced to empty platforms. The weapons factories were silent ruins. In 6 months of occupation, the humans had systematically removed every piece of military infrastructure the Krovar possessed. Engineer Subin walked through what used to be the largest shipyard in Krovar space. Her team followed behind, scanning and cataloging. They wore basic protective gear, not military armor. The fighting was over. Now came the harder work of making sure it could never start again. This dock could build 10 cruisers at once, her assistant noted, reading from historical records. The Krovar were proud of it. Subin nodded and checked her tablet. Cut the support structures here, here, and here. Disable the gravity generators. Remove the fabrication equipment. Everything goes to recycling. All of it? All of it. The work would take years. The humans were not just destroying Krovar military capability. They were erasing it so completely that rebuilding would require starting from scratch. The Krovar would have to invent shipbuilding all over again, but this time under human supervision. On the surface, a young soldier named Young Mi stood guard at a checkpoint. She was 23 years old and had joined the military because her brother died at Sanctuary. She had wanted revenge. She had wanted to make the Krovar pay. Now she had it, and it tasted like ash in her mouth. A group of Krovar civilians approached the checkpoint. They needed passes to travel between cities. Young Mi processed their documents with mechanical efficiency. An elderly Krovar looked at her with tired eyes. "My grandson was on one of the ships at Sanctuary," the old alien said quietly. "He was a weapons officer. He followed orders." Young Mi's hands froze on the document scanner. She looked up at the Krovar, trying to think of something to say. What came out was, "My brother was a farmer. He was planting crops when your ships came." They stared at each other for a moment. Two people from different species, both grieving, both angry, both exhausted. Then Young Mi stamped the pass and handed it back. "You can go." The old Krovar took the pass and nodded slowly. No words of thanks. No words of apology. Just acknowledgement that they both understood loss. Back on Veltaris, Ambassador Hyojin arrived at the Galactic Council for the first time since the war began. She walked through halls that had once been filled with casual conversation and laughter. Now species representatives avoided eye contact. They whispered when they thought she could not hear. Thalvex waited for her in a private meeting room. He had requested this conversation and she had agreed. When she entered, he stood respectfully. "Ambassador," he said, "thank you for coming." "Professor Thalvex." She sat across from him. Her face showed the strain of 6 months managing a war effort. "I read your reports. You documented everything. Someone needed to. The galaxy must understand what happened and why." Hyojin smiled sadly. "So they can fear us properly?" "So they can respect you appropriately," Thalvex corrected. "There is a difference." She pulled out a data pad and slid it across the table. "These are the surrender terms. We are presenting them to the Council tomorrow. I wanted you to see them first." Thalvex read through the document. His eyes widened as he progressed. The terms were harsh but not impossible. The Krovar would disarm. They would pay reparations over 50 years. They would accept human observers. But they would survive. Their people would live. Their culture would continue. "You could have destroyed them completely," he said quietly. "After Sanctuary, no one would have blamed you." "No," Hyojin agreed. "But then we would have become the monsters we were fighting against." My government debated this for weeks. Some wanted total destruction. Some wanted to reduce the Krovar to a pre-industrial state. But in the end, we decided that winning the war was not enough. We had to win the peace too. Thalvex felt his 3 hearts beat faster. "You are giving them a chance to rebuild. Under supervision, yes. It will take generations. But it is possible. We are not conquerors, Professor. We are people who wanted to be left alone to grow our crops and raise our children. The Krovar would not allow that. So we had to show them the cost of their choice. But we do not want to rule over them. We want them to learn from their mistake." The council meeting the next day was the largest gathering in galactic history. Every species sent representatives. The great hall overflowed into auxiliary chambers where thousands watched on screens. Everyone wanted to see what demands the humans would make. Admiral Yunsu stood before the council in his formal uniform. Behind him, screens showed footage of the war. Burning ships, destroyed bases, the ruins of Sanctuary. He let the images speak for several minutes before he began. 6 months ago, the Krovar Dominion issued an ultimatum. They demanded we abandon our colonies or face destruction. We refused. They attacked. They killed 3 million of our civilians. So we went to war. He paused and looked around the chamber. Species representatives could not meet his eyes. In 6 months, we have destroyed the Krovar military. We have occupied their homeworld. We have dismantled their war machine so completely that they cannot rebuild it for generations. We did this not because we are cruel. We did it because they gave us no choice. Yunsu gestured and the screens changed to show the surrender terms. These are our demands. The Krovar will disarm completely. They will pay reparations to the families of those who died at Sanctuary. They will accept human oversight of their government for 50 years. In exchange, we will allow their civilization to survive. Their people will live. Their culture will continue. But they will never again have the power to threaten others. A Krovar representative stood shakily. He was young. Probably someone promoted rapidly when all the senior officials died or fled. "And if we refuse these terms?" Yunsu looked at him with cold eyes. "Then we will reduce your homeworld to ash like you did to Sanctuary. And we will do it slowly, city by city, while the galaxy watches. Your choice." The Krovar representative sat down quickly. Another species representative from the Zenith Accord raised a tentacle. The council wishes to know if these terms apply to the Krovar alone, or if humanity intends to enforce similar terms on other species. Ambassador Hyojin stood to answer. These terms apply only to the Krovar, in response to their specific actions. Humanity has no interest in conquest or domination. We want to live in peace. But understand this clearly. What happened to the Krovar will happen to any species that attacks our people. We will not strike first, but if you strike us, we will finish the fight completely. Thalvex watched from his seat as the council voted on whether to support the human terms. It was unanimous. Every species voted yes. They had no choice. The humans had demonstrated their power. Now they were demonstrating their restraint. It was a careful balance of fear and respect. After the vote, Thalvex found young Mi at a human military base. She was packing her equipment, preparing to return home. He had learned about her from his research and he wanted to understand the human perspective. "Soldier young Mi," he said carefully. "May I speak with you?" She looked at the old alien with suspicion. "I don't do interviews. This is not an interview. It is a question from someone who wishes to understand." You fought in this war. You lost your brother. Now you stand guard over the species that killed him. How do you bear it? Young Me was quiet for a long time. Then she sat down on a supply crate and gestured for Thalvex to sit as well. I wanted them all dead, she said simply. Every Crovar. Every single one. I joined the military thinking I could make that happen. But then I got here and I saw their faces. Old people, children, regular folks who got caught up in decisions made by their leaders. And I realized something. What? Killing them all would not bring my brother back. It would just make more people who felt like me. More soldiers wanting revenge. So we're doing this instead. We're making sure the Crovar can never attack us again, but we're letting them live. Maybe their grandchildren will be different. Maybe not, but at least we're giving them a chance. Thalvex nodded slowly. That is a very wise perspective for someone so young. Young Mai laughed bitterly. I'm not wise. I'm tired. We're all tired. We won the war, but nobody feels like celebrating. We just want to go home. And yet you did your duty. We did what we had to do. That's all. The Crovar made a choice. We responded. Now it's done. Thalvex returned to his study that night and added to his journal. The entry would become the cornerstone of his book. The humans won not just with weapons, but with restraint. They showed the galaxy what they could do, then chose not to do the worst of it. This is their genius. They proved they could destroy completely, then demonstrated they could choose mercy. Now every species understands both the cost of challenging them and the benefit of peace with them. The humans have created a new order in the galaxy, built on respect born from fear tempered by hope. The Crovar learned too late. The rest of us must learn from their ashes.